The chamber stretched wide enough to hold 10,000 beings, and today it was full. Every seat in the Galactic Council Hall buzzed with nervous energy. Min adjusted his formal jacket and watched the assembled aliens with careful eyes. He had been Earth's ambassador for 5 years now, and he knew when something was wrong. The emergency summons had come without explanation. No agenda, no warning, just a command to appear before the full council. Beside him, his aide Wu leaned close. "Sir, have you ever seen them this agitated?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Min shook his head. They were clicking their mandibles in distress. The delegation kept shifting colors from calm blue to alarmed orange. Even the normally stoic, the council's archon, seemed troubled. His crystalline body refracted light in sharp, jagged patterns instead of the usual smooth glow. "Honored members," began, his voice carrying through the chamber without need for amplification. "We have discovered something that concerns us all. 3 days ago, our archaeological team on Ruins World Omega-7 uncovered a data cache. It is old, very old, 50,000 years, perhaps more." A murmur ran through the chamber. 50,000 years ago, most current species were still learning to make fire. Only a handful of extinct civilizations had reached the stars that long ago. "The cache contained warnings," continued, "written in 17 different dead languages. Our translators worked around the clock to decode them. Every single message said the same thing." He paused, and his next words fell like stones into still water. "Never take humans into war." Min felt his stomach drop. Wu's hand gripped his arm. Around the chamber, thousands of alien eyes turned toward the human delegation. The weight of their stares was almost physical. "That's impossible," Min said, standing. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. "Humans only reached space a century ago. 50,000 years back, we were barely using stone tools. How could anyone write warnings about us?" "That is precisely what troubles us," said Commander L, a towering with 4 arms and skin like burnished metal. "The warnings specifically describe your species: bipedal, endurance predators, pack hunters, forward-facing eyes. The descriptions match perfectly." "Perhaps they encountered another species similar to humans," Wu suggested. "Convergent evolution happens." Made a gesture and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed fragments of ancient text alongside disturbing images. Min saw crude drawings of human-like figures wielding primitive weapons. They were fighting against beings with advanced technology. Ships, energy weapons, force fields. And yet, in image after image, the humans were winning. "The records describe battles," explained. "A species calling themselves and encountered scout ships from the predecessor civilization. The predecessors had technology thousands of years beyond the ends. They should have won easily. Instead, every encounter ended with the ends victorious." "How?" asked a delegate from the back. "Primitive beings can't defeat advanced technology." "According to these records, they didn't fight logically," L said. His voice carried an edge of fear that Min had never heard from the normally confident commander. "They pursued wounded scouts across entire continents. They adapted to every tactic within days. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation if it gave their pack an advantage. The predecessors called them persistence predators who brought the mindset of hunting animals to warfare against intelligent beings." Min felt his hands curl into fists. "You're describing my ancestors as monsters based on 50,000-year-old propaganda." "We're describing them based on evidence," replied. "The final entry in the cache is most disturbing. It reads, 'We attempted to recruit them as allies against the Void Plague. They accepted. They saved us. They also terrified us more than the enemy ever did. When the war ended, they could not stop fighting. We had to leave this galaxy to escape what we had unleashed. Never take humans into war. Never teach them to fight beyond their world. Never show them the stars if they still make war among themselves.'" The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted questions. Some demanded humanity be expelled from the council. Others called for investigation. Min stood silent in the middle of the chaos, trying to process what he'd heard. High above the council chamber, Captain Rim watched through the viewing screens on her ship. She commanded the human defense fleet vessel that had brought Min to the council station. Now she stood on her bridge, surrounded by her crew, all of them watching the transmission in shocked silence. "Captain," said her navigation officer Dong, "do you think it's true, about our ancestors?" Rim didn't answer immediately. She thought about Earth's history, the wars, the endless, grinding conflicts that had defined human civilization until first contact forced them to unite. She thought about the military academies where they still studied ancient battles, still taught strategies from commanders thousands of years dead. "I think," she said slowly, "that humans have always been very good at war, maybe too good." Back in the chamber called for order. When the noise died down, he looked directly at Min, "Ambassador, we need answers. Your species has been peaceful since joining the council. You've followed every law, every protocol. But this discovery raises questions. What happens if humanity goes to war again? What happens if we ever need to fight alongside you?" Min met the Archon's gaze. "Humanity has grown beyond our violent past. We've had peace on Earth for over a century now. Whatever we were 50,000 years ago or 500 years ago, we're not that anymore." "Can you be certain?" El asked. "Can you promise that if pushed, if threatened with extinction, humanity wouldn't revert to what you were?" The question hung in the air. Min wanted to say yes. He wanted to promise that humanity had evolved beyond their violent nature. But he thought about Earth's history, about how quickly peace could shatter, about how his own grandfather had fought in the last war before unification, and sometimes woke screaming from dreams of battles 50 years past. "No," Min said quietly. "I can't promise that. No one can, but I can promise that we'll never be the ones to start a war." "Let us hope," said, "that we never have cause to test that promise. This session is adjourned, but know this, humanity, we will be watching, and we will be ready." As the chamber emptied, Wu touched Min's shoulder. "Sir, what do we do now?" Min looked at the hologram still floating in the chamber's center. Images of ancient humans fighting with stone and determination against impossible odds. "We send a message to Earth, tell them what we found, and we pray that nobody ever gives us a reason to prove those ancient warnings right." The warning came from the edge of known space. A mining colony had gone silent, then another, then 5 more in the span of a single day. When the council sent scout ships to investigate, only one returned, and it was damaged beyond repair. The pilot died before she could explain what attacked them, but her ship's memory banks told the story. The swarm had returned. In the council's war room, El stood before a holographic map showing the invasion routes. Red markers indicated lost colonies. There were already 37 of them, and the number grew each hour. "They're moving faster than our projections suggested. At this rate, they'll reach core systems within 6 months." Studied the map with his crystalline eyes. "How many ships can we mobilize?" 4,000 vessels from all member species combined. We have soldiers, yes, but they're trained for peacekeeping and defense. They don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They consume everything organic and move to the next target. "Then we need a new strategy," said Council Member In, her feathers ruffling in agitation. "We need military expertise beyond our own." Everyone in the room knew what she meant. For 3 weeks since the discovery of the ancient warnings, the Council had kept humanity at arm's length. Official meetings only. No private discussions. No joint military exercises. Now they needed what they feared. El was the one who traveled to the human delegation quarters. He found Colonel Dong in the training facility, running through combat drills with a group of human Marines. The colonel was older than most military officers, with gray in his hair and scars that spoke of experience. When he saw El, he called for the Marines to take a break. "Commander," Dong said, wiping sweat from his face, "this is unexpected." We need your help, El said bluntly. The swarm has emerged from dark space. They're destroying everything in their path. Dong's expression grew serious. I've read about the swarm in the historical databases. They nearly wiped out the sovereignty 4,000 years ago. Yes, and now they're back, possibly stronger. We need military advisors, people who understand warfare at a level we don't. Humans have that experience. You want us to teach you how to kill, Dong said quietly. We want you to teach us how to survive. Within hours, a meeting was arranged. Dong brought Commander Jin, his strategic specialist. She was younger, sharp-eyed, with the calm demeanor of someone who had studied every war Earth had ever fought. Together, they sat across from the Council's military leadership. We'll help, Jin said, spreading out tactical displays on the table. But we have conditions. Humans will serve as advisors only. We'll teach your forces, plan your strategies, but we won't take combat positions. Why not? El asked. Your people are experienced fighters. Because, Dong said, choosing his words carefully, we know what happens to humans in war. We become something different, something effective but dangerous. It's better if we stay in advisory roles. Who had joined the meeting leaned forward. You're trying to protect us from yourselves. We're trying to protect everyone, including ourselves. Take our knowledge, use our strategies, but let your own people fight. We'll support them, train them, guide them. Just don't ask us to bare our teeth. The council agreed. They were desperate, and even limited human involvement was better than none. Within a week, human advisors spread throughout the council fleet. They brought new ideas about warfare that made the alien commanders uncomfortable. Captain Ho taught fighter pilots about aggressive pursuit tactics. Don't just defend your position. Make them afraid to attack you. Chase them even when it seems unwise. Show them you won't stop. Lieutenant Bora worked with special forces, explaining psychological warfare. Wars aren't won by killing every enemy soldier. They're won by breaking the enemy's will to fight. Make them fear you more than they desire victory. On Earth, analyst Bin sat in the military archives reading old reports. She had clearance to access classified documents, and something was bothering her. The ancient warning from the data cache mentioned that species who allied with humans in war disappeared from records or emerged fundamentally changed. She wanted to understand what that meant. The deeper she dug, the more disturbed she became. She found references to the pacification wars, conflicts Earth had barely avoided in the early days of unification. She found psychological studies about combat stress and how human soldiers could disconnect their emotions from their actions when necessary. She found training manuals that taught young soldiers how to dehumanize enemies to make killing easier. But the most troubling thing she found was a classified report from the First Contact era. When humanity met there had been a brief conflict, a misunderstanding that escalated into violence. Human forces had responded with such overwhelming aggression that commanders surrendered within days, not because they were losing, but because they were terrified by human tactics. Bin sent an urgent message to Ambassador Min on the council station. Sir, I need to speak with the council. There's something in our history they need to know before this goes further. But her message never reached the council chambers. 3 hours after she sent it, news arrived that the swarm had destroyed the home world. 4 billion civilians, gone in a single day. The council fleet retreated in disarray. Commanders who had never experienced real loss, who had lived their entire lives in a peaceful galaxy, couldn't process what had happened. Ships fled back to defensive positions. Some crews abandoned their posts entirely, overcome with grief and shock. In the council war room, the mood was death itself. Stared at the map showing the home world marked in black. We can't win this. We should negotiate surrender terms before more worlds die. You can't negotiate with a hive mind that sees you as food, Dong said. He stood at the edge of the room, watching the council fall apart. But you can fight. How? L asked, his voice hollow. You've seen our forces. They're broken. Half the fleet has deserted. The others are calling for revenge but have no idea how to achieve it. We're not warriors. We don't know how to function in this kind of war. Dong exchanged glances with Jin. They both knew what came next. They had discussed it, dreaded it, prepared for it. There's another option, Jin said slowly. Let humans fight without restrictions. The room went silent. Every eye turned to the human officers. What do you mean? Asked. You wanted us as advisors because you feared what we'd become as combatants, Dong said. You were right to fear that, but the swarm is going to exterminate your species unless someone stops them, and your people can't do it. They're too civilized, too traumatized by loss. But humans, we know how to operate in that darkness. We've done it for thousands of years. You're asking us to unleash you, El said, to let you become the thing the ancient warnings described. We're offering you a choice, Jin corrected. Die with your morality intact or survive with the knowledge of what we had to do to save you. But if you choose survival, you have to promise something. Whatever happens next, whatever you see humans become in this war, you can't judge us for it afterward. You asked for this. Remember that. Looked around the room at his fellow council members. He saw fear in their faces, but also hope. Desperate, terrible hope. If we agree, can you win? We can make them regret ever coming to this galaxy, Dong said. The council chamber had never been so quiet. Every delegate sat frozen as Ambassador Min stood before them, his formal robes replaced with a simple military uniform. He looked tired, older than his years. Behind him on the viewing screens, the destroyed home world hung in space like a tomb. You want humanity to fight, Min said. It wasn't a question. You want us to stop holding back, to show you what we're capable of when we stop being diplomats and start being what we evolve to be. Yes, said simply. We're dying. Our fleets are in retreat. The swarm will reach the core worlds within months. We need warriors, and your species are the only true warriors in this council. Min looked at the assembled aliens. He saw fear, desperation, hope. Before we agree, I need you to understand something about humans. We're not like you. When your species developed intelligence, you moved beyond your predator roots quickly. You became civilized. You built societies based on cooperation and mutual benefit. War became a strange thing to you, something historical and distant. He gestured to the screens showing destroyed colonies. Humans aren't like that. We reach the stars while still making war on ourselves. Even now, even after a century of peace, every human child learns about ancient battles. We tell stories about warriors. We make heroes out of people who killed others efficiently. It's in our culture, in our bones. We managed to control it, to redirect it, but we never truly left it behind. Wu, standing beside him, added, what the ambassador means is that when you ask humans to fight, you're not asking us to learn something new. You're asking us to stop pretending to be something we're not. We understand the risks, El said. We've read the ancient warnings. We know what humans became in past wars, but we're facing extinction. What choice do we have? You always have choices, Min replied. You could evacuate. Abandon the outer systems, consolidate your forces around core worlds, and hope the swarm eventually moves on. You'd lose billions, but your species would survive. That's not acceptable, said In, her feathers trembling. We don't abandon our people. We don't sacrifice worlds to save ourselves. Then you're more like us than you think, Min said quietly. That's exactly how humans would respond, and that's why we'll help you. But we need something in return. We need a promise, recorded in binding, added to the Council's permanent records. What promise? Asked. Min looked directly at the Archon. You promise that when this war is over, you will not judge humanity for what we do during it. You will not put us on trial. You will not call us monsters. You asked us to fight. You asked us to save you. Whatever methods we use, whatever tactics we employ, whatever lines we cross, you accept responsibility for asking us to cross them. The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates shouted that this was too much, that humanity was asking for permission to commit atrocities. Others argued that extinction was worse than any moral compromise. The debate raged for hours. Finally called for order. We will grant this promise with one addition. Humanity may fight without restriction during this war, but after the war ends, you must return to your advisory role. You must help us understand what you did and why, so we never need to ask this of you again. Agreed, Min said. Send out the authorization. Special Mandate 7. Human forces are cleared for unrestricted combat operations against the swarm. Within hours, everything changed. Admiral took command of the combined fleet. He was a veteran of the unification wars on Earth, one of the last humans who had actually experienced total war. His reputation preceded him. During the wars, he had been called the Butcher of, not because he was cruel, but because he won battles at costs other commanders refused to pay. His second-in-command was Commander Haywan, a strategic genius who had spent 10 years studying hive mind species. She looked young, but her eyes were ancient. When she spoke to the assembled fleet commanders for the first time, her words were simple and terrifying. The swarm operates on fear, she explained, showing biological data on the screens. They're a collective intelligence. Each unit shares information with the whole. When they attack, they expect prey to flee or defend. They don't expect prey to fight back with intelligence and aggression. We're going to teach them a new kind of fear. The first change was tactical. Human commanders ordered the fleet to stop retreating. Instead, they advanced toward swarm-controlled territory. The alien crews were confused. This violated every defensive doctrine they knew. Captain Rim, now commanding a battle group, explained it to her liaison officer. Defense is about protecting what you have. War is about taking what the enemy has. We're not defenders anymore. We're hunters. The first real battle came at the system. The swarm had taken it 3 weeks earlier and was processing the colony's biomass. Council intelligence estimated 2 million swarm units were present, ordered an attack. We're outnumbered 5-1, El protested. This is suicide. No, corrected. This is what humans call shock and awe. Watch. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel not at the system's edge, but in low orbit over the main colony world. They appeared in the middle of the swarm's processing operation. Before the swarm could react, human-designed weapons activated. Kinetic bombardments, biological weapons that targeted the swarm's specific genetic markers, electromagnetic pulses that disrupted hive communication. The swarm fought back, but they were disorganized. They had never experienced an attack this aggressive. When units tried to retreat, human fighters pursued them into the atmosphere, into the oceans, into the caves where they tried to hide. They're running, In said, watching the battle displays in shock. The swarm is actually retreating. They've never fought predators before, Haywan said calmly. They're prey species that evolved to overwhelm through numbers, but humans evolved to hunt things bigger and stronger than themselves. We don't need to be stronger, we just need to be relentless. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, the system was free, but the cost was visible. 30% of the attack fleet was destroyed, thousands of crew members dead. The alien commanders were horrified by the casualties, seemed unmoved. We won, he said simply. The mission objective was achieved. The swarm lost 10 times what we lost. That's a victory. But so many died, El said. How can you be so calm about it? Because I'm a soldier, replied. This is what we do. We count objectives achieved, not lives preserved. That's what war means. That's what you asked for. On the council station, analyst Bin finally got through too. She showed him her research about human warfare, about the psychological changes that happen to human soldiers in combat, about how societies that partnered with humanity in war often became more militaristic themselves, infected by human attitudes about conflict. It's already happening, she warned. Your commanders are starting to think like humans. They're accepting casualties. They're celebrating kills. You asked humanity to save you, but you didn't realize they'd teach you to be like them in the process. Watched the victory reports from. He saw the numbers, the destroyed swarm units, the reclaimed territory, the momentum shifting. Is winning worth becoming something we're not? He asked. That's not my decision to make, Bin said. I'm just warning you what's coming. Humanity is effective at war because they embrace it, and now they're teaching your people to embrace it too. By the time this war ends, the Council might be unrecognizable. Looked at the ancient warning displayed on his personal screen. Never take humans into war. He finally understood it wasn't just about human capabilities. It was about what happened to everyone around them. War was a virus and humans were carriers. It's too late to stop now, he said. We've already been infected. 3 months into the war, the galaxy had changed. The Council fleet now operated under human doctrine, and the difference was terrifying. Admiral stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, watching tactical displays that showed 17 simultaneous battles across 6 star systems. His command staff worked around him with mechanical efficiency. No wasted words, no hesitation, just pure, focused aggression. Commander Haywan approached with a data pad. The research division finished their analysis of swarm biology. We have 3 new weapon systems ready for deployment. Show me, said. The first weapon was a viral agent. Engineer Sang-min had designed it specifically to attack the swarm's neural communication pathways. It didn't kill swarm units. Instead, it made them feel something they had never felt before: isolation. Cut off from the hive mind, individual units would panic and become easy targets. That's biological warfare, said Lieutenant Yang, one of the liaison officers who had been assigned to learn from the humans. It's banned under Council law. Council law was written for wars between civilized species, Haywan replied. The swarm doesn't follow your laws. They eat entire planets. We're fighting extinction with the tools that work, not the tools that make us feel moral. The second weapon was even worse. It was a neurotoxin delivered through atmospheric dispersal. Swarm units that breathed it would experience what Sang-min called existential dread. Their hive mind would flood with fear signals from millions of dying units simultaneously. The psychological damage would spread through the collective consciousness like a plague. You're weaponizing terror, Yang said, his voice shaking. Yes, Sang-min replied without emotion. War is terror. We're just using it more efficiently than they are. The swarm terrorizes prey species by eating them. We terrorize the swarm by making them afraid of being eaten themselves. It's the same thing, different direction. The third weapon was tactical, not technical. Pilot Min had developed what she called the Valkyrie Protocol. Human pilots would deliberately fly damaged ships into swarm formations and detonate their reactors at point-blank range. Suicide runs, essentially, but with volunteers who understood the mathematics of trading one life for hundreds of enemy kills. That's insane, El said when he heard about it. You're asking your people to die. We're not asking, Min corrected. We're offering them the chance. Some humans want to die in meaningful ways. If they choose to trade their lives for strategic victories, that's their decision, not yours. The weapons were deployed across multiple fronts simultaneously. The results were devastating. Swarm formations that had been advancing on core worlds suddenly retreated in disarray. Their hive mind, which had operated with perfect coordination for thousands of years, began showing signs of fragmentation. Units stopped following optimal tactics. Some even attacked each other in confused panic. Council observers sent report after report back to the Archon, each one more disturbed than the last. Captain Rim's battle group had hunted a swarm queen across 3 star systems, pursuing her for 6 weeks straight without rest. When they finally cornered her in an asteroid field, Rim's Marines boarded the queen's bioship and killed her with hand weapons, recording the execution and broadcasting it to the swarm as a warning. Corporal 1 and his unit specialized in what they called deep hunting. They would insert into swarm-controlled territory in small teams, moving through the enemy like ghosts. Their mission wasn't to hold territory or defend positions. It was pure predation. Find isolated swarm units and eliminate them slowly, making sure the deaths registered in the hive mind before the units fully expired. It was psychological warfare at its most basic and brutal level. One council captain, a named who had lost his entire family when the home world fell, watched the humans work and began to understand. "They're not fighting a war," he said to his first officer. "They're conducting a hunt. To them, the swarm isn't an army, it's prey." His first officer didn't respond. She was too busy studying human tactics, learning how to think like a predator instead of prey. The turning point came at the Nexus Cluster, a hub system that connected 12 major trade routes. The swarm had fortified it heavily, turning it into their primary staging ground. Council analysts said it would take 2 years and massive casualties to recapture it, said he could do it in 3 weeks. He was wrong. It took 4 weeks, but only because the swarm fought with desperate ferocity. The humans adapted to every defensive strategy. When the swarm used biological shields, the humans developed specialized rounds that triggered inside organic tissue. When the swarm tried to overwhelm with numbers, the humans taught alien crews about fighting retreats and defensive kills, trading space for enemy lives until the swarm exhausted itself. During one battle, a human marine named Bo held a corridor alone for 4 hours after his entire squad was killed. He was wounded 7 times, his armor was breached, his oxygen was leaking, but he kept fighting because the corridor was and letting the swarm through would have cost hundreds of lives behind the defensive lines. When reinforcements finally reached him, he was still standing, surrounded by swarm corpses. He died in surgery 3 hours later. The humans made him a legend. The aliens made him a cautionary tale. "They're broken," El said during a secure communication. "The humans, I mean. They're not right anymore. They laugh when they should cry. They sleep after battles where thousands died. They treat war like it's normal, like it's just another job. What have we done to them?" "We asked them to save us," replied. "This is the cost." But it wasn't just the humans who were changing. The alien crews who fought alongside them were transforming too. Pilots started using aggressive pursuit tactics even when ordered to withdraw. Soldiers began referring to enemies as targets instead of beings. Even Gentle In had started speaking about the swarm in language that emphasized extermination rather than defense. Analyst Bin watched it all from Earth, compiling reports that no one wanted to read. She documented how human warfare doctrine was spreading through the Council's military like an infection. She noted how casualty reports that would have caused planetary mourning 6 months ago now barely registered as news. She watched as alien cultures that had been peaceful began celebrating soldiers and building monuments to battles. "We're winning," she wrote in her classified assessment, "but we're losing ourselves. The question isn't whether we can defeat the swarm anymore. The question is whether we'll recognize ourselves when the war is over." On the front lines, no one had time for philosophy. The swarm was retreating, yes, but they were also adapting. They had learned to fear humans, but fear made them unpredictable. Some swarm units started using kamikaze tactics, mimicking human suicide runs. Others tried to negotiate, sending telepathic signals that begged for mercy. Commander Haywan's response was clinical. "The swarm doesn't understand mercy. They understand force. When an apex predator shows weakness, other predators sense it. We keep pushing until they break completely." In the 8th month of the war, the swarm made a final stand at their core breeding world. It was a massive planet, mostly organic, where new swarm units were spawned by the billions. Taking it would effectively end the swarm's ability to replace losses. It was also defended by more swarm units than had ever been gathered in one location. The battle would be the largest and bloodiest of the entire war. Admiral looked at the tactical projections. 60% casualties expected for the assault fleet, maybe higher. Thousands of ships would be destroyed. Tens of thousands of crew members would die, but the swarm would be finished. The galaxy would be saved. It was a trade any human commander would make without hesitation. All fleets prepare for final assault, he ordered. This is what we came here to do. This is what they asked us to do, so let's finish it. The swarm's home world burned. From orbit, Captain Rim watched as human-designed weapons tore into the planet's organic surface. The world itself was alive, a massive breeding ground that pulsed with billions of swarm units. Now it was dying, and the screams of the hive mind echoed through every telepathic species in the fleet. The battle had lasted 6 days. The casualties were worse than projected. 47% of the assault fleet was gone, over 30,000 crew members dead, another 20,000 wounded, but the swarm was finished. Their breeding world was collapsing. Their remaining forces were scattered and leaderless. The war was over. Rim stood on her bridge, staring at the tactical display that showed debris fields where Allied ships used to be. Her communications officer, a young woman named Sora, was crying quietly at her station. They had lost contact with 3 escort destroyers in the final push. 200 crew members probably dead. Friends, colleagues, people Sora had eaten meals with just days ago. "Captain," Sora said through her tears, "is this what victory looks like?" Rim didn't answer immediately. She thought about the officer she had been 8 months ago when this war started. She remembered being horrified by human combat doctrine. Now she understood it. Now she had given orders that killed people under her command. Now she could look at casualty numbers and calculate whether the trade was worth it. She had become what she feared. "Yes," Rim finally said. "This is exactly what victory looks like. Remember it. Never let yourself forget what we paid for it." The council convened an emergency session to address the war's end. The chamber was different now. Memorial crystals lined the walls, each one representing a world or station that had been lost to the swarm. The delegates who gathered wore mourning colors. They had won, but it felt nothing like victory. Ambassador Min entered the chamber in his military uniform. He looked older than his years. His hair had gone partially gray during the war. His hands shook slightly from exhaustion. Behind him walked Admiral and Commander Haywon, both of them moving with the mechanical precision of people who had stopped feeling months ago. Called the session to order. "The swarm has been defeated. Our species have survived. We owe this survival to humanity's military intervention. As agreed in Special Mandate 7, we now convene to discuss the transition back to peacetime operations." But before he could continue, Min raised his hand. "May I speak first, Archon?" "Of course, Ambassador." Min stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of everything that had happened. 8 months ago, you asked humanity to fight for you. You asked us to stop being diplomats and become soldiers. You asked us to show you what we're capable of when we embrace our nature as predators. We did exactly what you asked, and now you're afraid of us. I can see it in your eyes, all of you. You're grateful we saved you, but you're terrified of what we became to do it. The chamber was silent, no one his words. "So here's what we propose," Min continued. "The Human Containment Protocol. It's already written, already approved by Earth's government. We're volunteering to limit ourselves." Admiral stepped forward and activated a holographic display. "Effective immediately, human military forces will be reduced to defensive operations only. No offensive capabilities beyond what's necessary to protect our own territory. We'll share our warfare knowledge with the Council, but only under strict ethical guidelines and with multiple oversight committees. All human soldiers will rotate back to civilian life within 2 years," Commander Haywon added. "We're not building a warrior culture. We're not creating a permanent military class. Every human who fought in this war will return to being farmers, teachers, engineers, artists. We'll remember what we did, but we won't make it who we are." "In exchange," Min said, "we ask one thing. The Council must promise to never ask humanity to go to war again. Never. If another threat emerges, you face it with the knowledge we've shared, but you face it yourselves. Don't ask us to become monsters again. We'll do it if you ask, because we can't seem to refuse when people need saving. But it costs us every time. It costs us pieces of ourselves. So please don't ask. El stood from his seat. The commander looked different now, harder. His forearms bore scars from close combat, something that would have been unthinkable before the war. We accept your protocol, but I have to ask, why are you doing this? You won, you saved us. You could demand anything. Military authority, territory, resources. Why limit yourselves? Because we know what comes next if we don't, said quietly. We've been here before. A side door opened. An intelligence officer entered carrying a data crystal. He approached the podium with hesitation, like someone bringing news they wish they didn't have to deliver. We've decoded the final sections of the ancient data cache, the one that contained the warnings about humanity. There's more, asked. Yes, Archon, and it changes everything. One activated the crystal, and text appeared above the chamber in every major council language. The warnings weren't left by an alien civilization. They were left by humans. The chamber erupted in confusion. One waited for the noise to die down before continuing. 50,000 years ago, humanity reached the stars. We found other species. We joined a galactic community. And then that community faced an existential threat. They asked humans to fight, and we did. We saved them just like we saved you. But afterwards, we couldn't stop. War had become so normal to us that we couldn't transition back to peace. We turned on each other. We nearly destroyed the galaxy fighting among ourselves. The civilization we saved eventually left our galaxy entirely, traveling to another one to escape us. Before they left, they erased most of human space-faring technology and seeded Earth with the survivors. They hoped that if we evolved again, we might do better. The warnings they left were meant for both the new galactic civilizations and for humanity itself. A reminder of what we're capable of, both good and bad. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Every being present struggled to process what they'd heard. Min felt his legs weaken. He sat down heavily, staring at the ancient text floating above them. Words written by humans tens of thousands of years ago, warning the future about themselves. So we're not the first, In said, her voice barely a whisper. We're not the first civilization to make this mistake with humanity. No, one confirmed. But you can be the first to learn from it, the first to help humanity learn from it. That's why the protocol includes something else, a cultural initiative called Project Remembrance. A human civilian entered the chamber. Her name was Ah, and she was a historian and educator. She looked nervous speaking before the council, but her voice was steady. Project Remembrance will document everything that happened in this war, every battle, every decision, every cost. We'll teach it to every human child, but we won't glorify it. We'll show the truth, the necessity and the horror, the victory and the cost, so that future generations understand what war really means. We'll also document the choice you made, Ah continued, looking at how you asked humanity to fight despite the warnings, how you accepted the moral burden of unleashing us. That's part of the lesson too. Sometimes survival requires terrible choices, but those choices should never be made lightly. Stood and walked to the center of the chamber. The Council accepts the human containment protocol. We accept our responsibility for what we asked of humanity. And we make this promise: we will add our own warning to the galactic archives. For whatever civilizations might come after us or might already exist in other galaxies, the warning will read, "We survived because they saved us. We survived because they saved us from themselves. Never take humans into war. But if you must, pray they remember how to stop." The formal ceremony followed. Medals and honors for human soldiers, expressions of gratitude from surviving species, memorials for the dead. But everyone in that chamber knew the truth. They had been changed by this war. Not just humans, but all of them. They had learned to think like predators. They had learned to accept casualties. They had learned that survival sometimes requires becoming something you hate. Captain Rim stood in the memorial garden later that evening, looking at the crystal bearing her ship's name and the names of crew members who hadn't come home. Shira stood beside her, no longer crying but hollow-eyed and quiet. "Will we ever be normal again?" Sora asked. "I don't know," Rim admitted. "But we'll try. That's what the protocol is for, to give us the chance to try." On Earth, Ah began her work on Project Remembrance. The first entry in the historical record was simple. We were asked to become monsters to save the innocent. We succeeded at both. May we never forget the cost of either. In the Council archives, the new warning was recorded alongside the ancient one. Two messages separated by 50,000 years, both saying the same thing in different ways. Humanity was dangerous, not because they were evil, but because they were effective at something civilizations should never be effective at: war. And somewhere in deep space, on a forgotten world in a distant galaxy, ancient sensors detected the new warning being added to the galactic database. Systems that had been dormant were activated briefly, recording the information. The beings who had fled humanity's violence so long ago received confirmation that their descendants had survived, had reached the stars again, had made the same mistakes and hopefully learned from them. They added their own note to their private archives. They did it again. They saved another civilization. Let's hope this time they remember the lesson. Let's hope this time they teach it forward instead of forgetting it. Because if they forget again, if they lose control again, there may not be another galaxy far enough away to escape to. The war was over. The galaxy was saved. And humanity had proven once again that they were capable of extraordinary things, both beautiful and terrible. The only question that remained was whether this time they would remember which one they wanted to be.